Today I want to teach you an underappreciated skill, programming MIDI effects confidently, quickly, and easily in the Sunday Keys app. If you don't know what MIDI effects are, if that sounds like a lot to understand, don't freak out. I'm going to teach it to you in a couple simple steps based on the real world context of I needed to do this for a song that I played recently at church. Without further ado, let's dive into sound design MIDI effects in the Sunday Keys app. I'm going to load in my go-to Ready for Anything patch, and we'll actually put a link in the description to a video we did on how I conceive of this Ready for Anything patch, and you can download it for yourself. I use it all the time. It's a great catch-all patch for when I'm not sure where I'm gonna go. I always have it in my set list towards the bottom for anything unscripted, but I also use it as a template when I need to build more specific patches for certain songs. So this is the Ready for Anything patch. It has 8 sounds ready to go, and it has snapshots already programmed. It's a lot of the work already done for me when I'm preparing for a lot of sort of standard songs. But we're talking about MIDI effects today, and the real world context that inspired this video was checking the service order recently, and I noticed that Revelation Song had been added. I love Revelation Song. At this point, is it a classic? I guess that makes me feel kind of old, but I felt this wave of nostalgia as I thought about playing Revelation Song. So we're in, I have to say the key, we're in G or D Mixolydian. You guys can argue in the comments. Anyways, so right out of the gate, the Ready for Anything patch, it could cover this pretty darn well. All the way to the end, building up. So that's kind of the base I'm building on. And of course, as always, all the sounds you're hearing are straight from the Sunday Keys app. No post-processing required. That red dot means we're screen recording that captures the audio. We pull it out, and that's what you're hearing. So if you use these sounds, they're gonna sound like this. Okay, so let's talk about MIDI effects. I'm gonna bring this all in moment. That's where we're gonna end up. We're gonna program some stuff there, but earlier on in the song, I wanted to add a couple of elements. So we're gonna talk about 2 MIDI effects today inside of Sunday Keys. Let's start off with the sequencer MIDI effect. So I went back to one of the original versions of the song. Can't remember if it was maybe Jesus Culture, and it had a really cool, sort of a repetitive melodic part from like a mellow synth, sort of like a mono synth. And I wanted to be able to replicate that, but I wanted to focus on, playing piano. So I decided to put this on a sequencer, which just means if I play the notes in time, then I'm gonna get this sequence back in time. So first off, I gotta dial in the tempo of this song. I think we played it at maybe 72. That sounds about right. Okay, so when you wanna program a sequencer on a sound, first make sure you have the sound you want to use selected. And I'm gonna add a sound in here. And you can make any sound be a sequence if you add a sequencer to it. For my purposes, I think I chose this mono lead sound because it had that sort of mellow synthy thing going on. Part that I wanted to sequence was something that I'll try and play it. I need a low note there. So of course, I could play it freehand, but if I was trying to play piano along with it, it would just start to sound really weird, really fast. So like this. It's just too much. It's not that important of a part. It's a background part. So sequencing it makes loads of sense. Now this sound has an arpeggiator MIDI effect on it by default. I'm just gonna open that effect and hit replace effect and choose sequencer. Now, sequencing in the Sunday Keys app, in also programming chord triggers, which we're gonna talk about later on in the video, has sort of a 2-step workflow. You pick your input note, and then you program the sequence of notes that you want as the output. And this is just based on what you play. So if you play Revelation Song, it just has 4 chords. So in the original key, we're playing D, A minor, C major, and G major. So most of the time when I program sequences, I'm focusing on the bass notes. One of my pretty confident I'm always going to be playing, because then I can be confident that the sequence is going to be triggered. So for me, I'm going to choose D, A, C, and G as my input notes. So I'm going to play an input note first, and it's learned. So then I'm going to play the sequence back that I want. Now this sequence works out well for me because it doesn't have any rests, so I can just play it. And then there it is. Now I can play. I gotta turn the effect on. That goes a long way. And then I need to dial in the subdivision. Okay, and I can adjust the velocity also. Probably don't want it full strength. There we go. And then I'm gonna do the same thing for my second one. And it's helpful for me to think through the progression, not necessarily just like work my way up or down the keyboard. So I'm gonna learn A. Okay, and then I can hear that back. Okay, and then I'm gonna learn C. I'm always like, should I learn the low octave or the high octave? I kind of lean towards the low octave, because if I do leave one of the two off, it's probably my thumb. So then I'm gonna learn this one. And then my last one, oops, made a little mistake there. I'll trash that, start over. Last is on the G, and I'm trying to decide, do I want to do like this? Let's hear how that sounds. Might be a little bit too defined, like this is a G chord, so I think I might just do back to sort of the original sequence. Which sounds weird without the context of everything going on, but I think it's gonna work well for the overall idea. So now I'm just gonna bring in at least some basic layers so we can hear how this sounds. Okay, so that's programming sequences. If I needed any rests, then I would just leave rests in my playing and purposely jump over a note as I was learning it. You can also remove anything by long pressing and tapping remove. You can overdub anything by just selecting it and playing a new note. You can add as many input notes as you would like. For me, these 4 notes are going to do the job. I am going to bring the tempo down a little further as I'm just playing it. Maybe it's just because there's no band with me, but it feels kind of fast. So I don't know. Maybe it isn't fast, but we're going to play it a little slower. So. And then as we go all in, I'm going to keep that sequencer on. Awesome, so now I'm just gonna set the max volume to be a little lower than 0 because I don't want it front of mix. There we go, and then I'm gonna update my snapshots so that the sequencer is on because I want it to be on. And then of course I can adjust the volume, so I probably don't want it for my down snapshot. Maybe as I start to build, I do. There's more to do here, but the point of today's video is talking about program the effect itself. So that's the first kind of MIDI sequence that I often program, where different input notes are going to trigger something specific melodically, and that input note is kind of important. There's a second kind of sequence that I program all the time. I think it's really important that I explain the difference between the two, because I think this is something that you can put in your toolkit for any time you need to have like a big moment where you want something happening underneath. Let me just show you what I mean. The idea here is that no matter what you're playing, whatever input notes you're playing, there's something repetitive and sort of rhythmic that's happening as the output. So in this case, it's almost like a loop or an element that's just happening in the background. So for this song, I wanted to do something with a piano-like character, but I didn't want to get in the way of the grand piano. So what I ended up choosing to do is grab this mini piano, and I think I grabbed the felt dart. There. I'm gonna bring this main piano down. And the idea that I had was I wanted to just do something like a loop, like. but I didn't want to play that live, obviously. So we're going to add a sequencer MIDI effect. And we're going to program, I'm going to set this to 16ths. I think that's the subdivision I want. I'll turn the effect on. And the process here to program is the same. So I'm going to play my input note, and then I'm going to play my sequence. Let's program our A. And then our C. And the idea here is that no matter what input notes I'm playing, it's the same output. And then I'll bring the velocity down. There we go. And then I'm going to add some delay. There we go. And then the last thing that I did when I was prepping for this particular weekend service was I took out some of the low end. So about like that. So then when I get to my all in moment, which is where I really want this, I'm going to go ahead and save that. It's just going to add this energy that I'm really kind of taking the weight off of myself to play rhythmically for these big moments, which means I can diamond chords, or we'll talk in a second about maybe doing a right hand lead part. But it's a bit more in the foreground than I probably want it in the real world, so I'd bring it back down. It's just in the background. And then you can hear these two sequences playing together. I'll go bring these things out for a second. These two sequences are really playing off each other nicely, in my opinion. And I think that the two things together for those big all-in moments just add that bit of producer polish, especially if you're playing with light tracks or minimal tracks, maybe no tracks at all, or just percussion. Then you can fill in these sorts of extra textures from the piano. Okay, so we've talked about the sequencer MIDI effect. Now I want to talk about what is maybe even more of a helpful tool for a lot of worship bands that I see people not using as much as they could, not using it to its full potential, and that is the easy chord MIDI effect. I'm going to take these sequences back out. Now let's say when we get to these big moments here, we're all in, very big, and in my right hand, I probably want to start doing something pretty noticeable, and it might not be as piano-centric, like and with the piano, you know. Or even my favorite, this really edgy dystopic lead. And that sounds really cool with these sorts of layers. I've got the pads kind of in there. The big bright pad is sort of filling that lead space at this moment. But if I'm playing all of this, like all of these layers together, and I'm doing, even with the sequences here, just so you get the idea. There's a lot going on, and depending on your band, that might be just the right amount of space to fill. But what I want to show you is a way that you cannot have the bottom drop out when you go to those right-hand lead parts, and instead make sure that things stay full, but also controlled. So you can play even, well, I wouldn't play C sharp. D mixolydian, baby. You can play pretty busy in the right hand without things muddying up. The problem right now is that these pads are just trying to follow along in that right hand. So what I'm going to do is program an easy chord instance for these big moments only. And let's do this for my big bright pad. We're going to swap out this MIDI effect for easy chord. Easy chord follows a similar principle to the sequencer effect in that you program an input note and then you program one or more output notes. But instead of them playing back as a sequence over time, easy chord is going to play all of the output notes at once as a chord. So it effectively allows you to play one note and hear a chord in response. So I'm going to play my input, and then I'm going to play a chord that's whatever I want for this big bright pad. I'm just going to play a nice big open voicing. I might do that there, and then there, and I want to make sure I get my bass notes in there also. So like that. All right, now I'm not learning. And for that C, I think I might want that D to drop down to a G. So I want to revoice this. Something like that. Because then that G right here, the G3, is sort of that one moment we're acknowledging the interesting scale that we're playing in. Okay, so now I've got easy chord here on the big bright pad. Let's go ahead and add it to the organ pad also. I'm going to save this as a preset, and then I can recall it on the other really easily. So there's that. We'll swap out the organ pad MIDI effect for easy chord, scroll down to user presets and apply. Now we've got that in there as well. Gotta turn it on. So you can hear what this is doing. Take out the other pads really quick. So this lets me play a lot more freely in the right hand. And when you listen to the original versions of these songs, oftentimes the pads are moving way less than the more primary instruments in the song. So the piano is maybe going to play a little bit more melodic stuff, some voice leading or some doubling, but the pads are just going to be hitting the changes and holding. And when you're playing piano and pad layered together, the piano is sort of dictating where the pad has to go, unless you use an effect like easy chord. Now, throughout most of this song, I want those pads to be freely available to me. I want to be able to voice them. It's only really when we get to these all-in moments that I feel like I want to be able to change my approach in that right hand. So here for this all-in snapshot, I'm going to go ahead and turn on those two instances of easy chord and hit save. So now I can start at this building snapshot. And then hit my all in. Here we go. I have easy chord letting me move in the right hand. And those pads are consistent, they're not dropping. Mix this down a little bit. There, probably feels about right. But I'm able to go from this very basic starting point. And then as I get here, I can add in that basic sequence in the background. Extra bar to build. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can adjust also how I want these snapshots to work. So if I want them to, they can turn MIDI effects off at the start, the middle, or the end. In this case, I'd probably bring their volume down here for these sequencer instances. I'd probably also do the same for these two easy chord pads, and then we're gonna set them to be off and save. So then when I go for my all in, this happens smoothly and slowly. And the awesome thing about easy chord is that it will continue to hold notes that were already being played before or after the effect. So if you have easy chord on and you play a note and then you turn it off, they'll sustain until you release that input note. And the opposite is true also. So I can be playing a chord and I can turn on these easy chord instances either on the fly or thanks to a snapshot, and the already held notes will continue to sustain seamlessly until I play something else. Which is really awesome, just to be able to make sure that those transitions are super seamless. So that's a bit about the sequencer and easy chord MIDI effects inside of the Sunday Keys app. We've tried to make it easy for you to program stuff that would be very difficult to program anywhere else. I'll put a link in the description to this shared set list with this specific patch that I made for Revelation songs, so you can check it out if you want to tear apart those sequences or maybe save them to your own user library if you'd like to use them yourself. And I'll also put a link in the description to that general Ready for Anything patch video that I mentioned at the start of this one. The patch I'm using today as sort of a template for this song is something that I use all the time to cover unscripted moments and also to help me start building patches a little bit faster. Leave a comment and let us know what you learned today, if you learned something new. And of course, be sure to subscribe and like this video. That helps support what we're doing here at Sunday Sounds. We really appreciate it. Thanks. Have a great day.